Smoky skies and wildfire smoke. That is the big weather story for this week, as that Canadian wildfire smoke has made its way all the way to the Midwest, and it's adversely impacted our air quality. Thanks for tuning into this week's edition of the Climate Friday newsletter. Whether you're finding us on YouTube, on the WTOL 11 website, or on WTOL 11 Plus, good to have you with us. We're going to break down the science behind where is this smoke originating from, how is it making its way all the way to Ohio and Michigan, and how is it impacting our air quality here at home. Lastly, we're going to answer the question, how is climate change impacting wildfire smoke, and are these fires going to become a more commonplace occurrence in the future? Let's jump into the graphics and get into the science of air quality and wildfire smoke in this week's edition of the Climate Friday newsletter. Now, the worst of the smoke occurred earlier to the middle of the week. If you're watching this on Friday, thankfully the worst of the smoke is now in the past. We saw the lowest air quality occur on Tuesday into Wednesday before gradually improving later on in the week. Much of Northwest Ohio saw an air quality index close to 200, which is the highest that it's been in decades. That falls within the unhealthy territory. Ideally, you want that AQI as low as possible, and that means the air is more pristine. A good air quality index occurs when the AQI is between 0 and 50, and that scale goes all the way up into the ballpark of the hundreds. A hazardous AQI is 300 plus, but even at the level that we have been at in that 151 to 200, that is unhealthy for all individuals, especially those with respiratory conditions like asthma, and the elderly and the very young may experience the worst of the symptoms. Now, the air quality in Toledo this week was worse than many populous international cities, and a lot of these cities have a reputation for being highly polluted. Some of those cities that have better air this week include Dubai and Delhi, Baghdad and Seoul, to name a few cities. That AQI in Toledo got almost to 200. Dubai wasn't even that bad. Delhi wasn't that bad. And Baghdad and Seoul, the air quality indices there was barely half of what it was in Toledo. Now get this, the AQI in Toledo was actually better than some other Northwest Ohio cities, including Port Clinton, which had arguably the worst air of any city in the United States. The air quality index got as bad as 275, and that is the territory where you start to experience some health symptoms just stepping outside. And that not only impacts the elderly, but any individuals with prolonged exposure can have health symptoms. Here are some of the worst AQIs that we saw this week. Wasion and Adrian close to 200, Bryan close to 180. Some of those health symptoms include itchy eyes and a headache. You may have experienced those yourself this week. Also a sore throat, and a more extreme symptom is difficulty breathing due to prolonged exposure to this wildfire smoke. Now, some of those symptoms can occur within a matter of minutes. More often than not, though, it takes a long exposure. So for folks who work in construction or any outdoor manual labor, those symptoms are more commonplace. There is some overlap between wildfire symptoms and allergy symptoms, and a lot of these may resemble allergy symptoms. So does wearing a mask help? Well, it depends. Yes and no. If you still have those leftover cloth or cotton masks from the pandemic, those are not very effective in blocking the wildfire smoke. N95 surgical grade masks and KN95 masks, those are a little bit better at blocking the minute, fine particulate matter that occurs from the wildfire smoke. Now, one of the other consequences is the hazy sunrises and sunsets. In fact, you're lucky to even see any sunshine at all with how hazy and obscured it's been. But generally speaking, the sun looks more reddish orange at sunrise and sunset due to that Canadian wildfire smoke. Without the smoke, the sun is bright and the sky is more clear. That is how a sunset should look. This week has not exactly resembled a typical sunset. Another thing you may have noticed is the smell of the wildfire smoke. It is a similar smell to a campfire or a bonfire, and if you stepped outside for that walk or bike ride, you may have noticed it smells like someone's burning something, and that is because of that smoky smell of wildfire smoke. It all has to do with ultraviolet radiation or UV radiation, which breaks down the smell, and the sunlight, in other words, the UV rays from the sun come down, and when they permeate that wildfire smoke, those rays cause the release of that scent from the wildfire smoke. So when are conditions going to start to improve? If you're watching our Climate Friday here on Friday or even Saturday, you've likely noticed less hazy skies. For the start of the holiday weekend, the AQI is going to get significantly better. We'll be in that ballpark of 50 to 80. Now remember earlier on when we talked about the air quality scale, you want it to be under 50. So still a little bit higher than ideal, but a much improved upon what we had earlier this week. Here's that AQI forecast heading into the 4th of July holiday. Friday, Saturday and Sunday, we're going to be in the fair territory. In other words, the air could be a little bit irritating to those of you with respiratory conditions, but the vast majority of you, no health concerns stepping outside this weekend. Looking ahead towards Monday and the 4th of July, Tuesday, air quality finally becoming good. And that means that when you head outside for that backyard cookout, the only smoke you're going to smell is from the hot dogs and hamburgers, not from the wildfires. That'll be good news for the holiday weekend. So where is this smoke coming from, and how in the world is it getting all the way here to Ohio and Michigan? It's coming from Canada in this instance. In the past, we've talked about California wildfires, Oregon wildfires, Washington fires. These ones are coming from Canada, where over 400 active fires continue to blaze. Even though some of the fires have been contained or quenched, we are still seeing 400 active fires. In terms of the total acreage, it is approaching 20 million acres of land, and that is a yearly record for Canada. No other year in recorded history has seen this much scorched earth due to the wildfires, and the jet stream is responsible for lifting that smoke all the way to the Midwest. Now, the jet stream is essentially a conveyor belt that guides the weather from point A to point B. That jet stream is bringing the smoke here at home, and sometimes that smoke comes down to the Earth's surface due to cooler, more dense air sinking down, and that lowers the air quality as that smoke drifts down to the Earth's surface. This year, 2023, ranks as #1 for the largest burn area in Canadian history. The former record was 1989, which was also a real bad wildfire year. This year, though, is now #1. Now, part of that has to do with the weather. We've seen abnormal drought across all of the Canadian provinces, and the prolonged nature of that drought has provided the ripe ingredients for wildfires to proliferate. Dry conditions, hot conditions, windy conditions. Those three weather parameters cause the wildfires to grow. And of course, climate change is making drought and heat more commonplace. So here's the link between climate change. We're seeing warmer temperatures. It's no secret that Earth is getting warmer, and when the mercury rises, the wildfire risk also rises. Due to the increase in heat, you cause more evaporation. In other words, when the thermometer rises, more of the moisture gets sucked out of the soil, and when the soil dries out, that causes a better ingredient and a more likelihood for those fires to start and spread. Also, we're seeing greater extremes. With climate change, yes, we are getting soaking, flooding rains, but we're also getting the other extreme, and that means increased proliferation of drought. And we've seen a drought start to develop not only in northwest Ohio and southeastern Michigan that has been under a moderate drought, but also a good portion of the Central Plains. Some of those western states and the Plains states, that red color shows you folks that really desperately need the rainfall. Farmers in the Midwest, including parts of Illinois, Missouri, and Iowa, really badly need some rain. If you think the drought is bad here, though, it was even worse across Canada. And when you get those drought conditions, coupled with the gusty winds and the extreme heat, that trifecta of weather ingredients causes the wildfires to spread. In other words, climate change is making these weather ingredients more commonplace. Even if the fires are caused by man-made causes such as cigarette butts or matches, it is climate change that is allowing them to spread so rapidly. There is no single cause or origin of necessarily all these fires, but climate change is one of several ingredients that is making wildfires more commonplace. We'll continue to keep an eye on those western wildfires and how the smoke is impacting us here at home. Stay tuned for next week's Climate Friday newsletter, and we'll welcome you into the month of July and keep you updated throughout the month.